Hello there, RACER.com fans. Now, let me just say something. If you like open wheel racing, IndyCar racing, and you didn't like what you saw today at Baltimore, then I give up. Because, yeah, there was a lot of carnage. Yeah, there was a lot of people mad, but we got some new hate going. We had a podium that was pretty cool. Penske and Ganassi had their moments for a while, and they crashed out. Graham Rahal passed 300 cars and finished 17th. Elio Castroneves didn't pass any cars and finished 7th. The championship may be over. It may not be over. On my left, J.R. Hildebrand, who was, I think he wishes he was out there today.
I think we had the line of the day from Brian Herta, which was, I think you could have entered a golf cart in today's race, and as long as you get in an accident, you would have finished in the top 10. So it's a bummer not to be out there when you see. But I think you're always optimistic from the sidelines, like, oh, I would have been the guy that missed all this stuff, So who knows?
David Malsher, the editor of RACER. Now, David, do you think this is the kind of deal where, guys are like after the race, they got to do something about you? I mean, it was a pretty interesting race, was it not?
In between the carnage, it was very interesting. Yeah, it was actually, it was one of those races that certainly wouldn't have needed rain to make it more interesting. Joseph was just talking about the fact that, once he hit the marbles, it was like ice, and he went backwards by about 5 cars and just couldn't get going again. Yeah, it was kind of interesting, but it was embarrassing. It was like the last scene of Hamlet. You were wondering if there's going to be anyone left at the end.
But see, I'm old. I go back to the old Toronto, Cleveland, Portland days where they never made it through turn one, and it was. But when this reminds me. I told JR. This reminds me of indoor midget racing. There's always going to be contact. I mean, especially when that little tempting chicane, that little tempting hairpin just invites it. It's wide enough, and everybody's got a big run going.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about this track that makes it difficult is there's a lot of places where you've kind of got like converging walls, So turn one, it tightens up and kind of bottlenecks there at the exit. That's what causes the accidents there. Going through 3, you can't get through there too wide. The car on the inside, you could be going 2 miles an hour, and the car, you could just have crew guys pushing it, and it can't make that kind of radius with a car around the outside. So I think that's why it happens so frequently here at Baltimore. Is just because there's a lot of those places that you literally just can't fit 2 cars side by side. But I think that's kind of just the nature of the beast. We went through a significant portion of the race, I think past halfway, with no real incidents and guys, doing their thing, and it was a great race as it was. So to David's point, it's frustrating to see it all go to hell kind of at the end, because it makes it seem sort of gimmicky that this is happening, and you're watching it feeling bad for the guys because you can't help but have it look kind of silly the way that it ended today.
Especially when you're stacked up in a 25-mile-an-hour corner, and as A.J. Foyt used to say, we look ridiculous out there because we got them 250-mile-an-hour race cars going 30 miles an hour. That ain't how me and Parnelli ran. But now, let's talk about Pagenaud real quick. Marshall and I were talking about this earlier. Marshall Pruitt and I were talking about this earlier, that he was 5th in the points, but he said, I've only won 1 race. This ain't where we need to be. I think that's why the guy is probably going to be a potential champ someday, and I think Penske and Ganassi got to take a serious look at this guy.
Absolutely. I mean, he was fantastic here last year as well. Schmidt have had some bad street course cars, except obviously the second race at Detroit this year. But Simon's just clearly very, very quick, and he tends to keep his head together when everyone around him is losing theirs. And he's very composed. He can think while he drives, which is not necessarily the case with everyone. And I think that was part of it. When he dropped to the back, he kept his head together, kept moving forward. Even when around him it looked like a nuclear strike. So yeah.
JR, when Will pulled out, I mean, the championship's not necessarily decided, but at one time Dixon was first and Castroneves was 17th, and you're thinking, now this is going to be good by the time we get to Houston. And, of course, it all went to hell for Dixon. When you watch the replay of Will pulling out, getting a run on Bourdais, and do you have any sympathy for what happened for Power?
I mean, I know that Will, you can tell that Will must feel horrible about the whole thing. I mean, he runs into him in practice, totally just a whatever thing. Like he's not trying to screw up Dixon's weekend, but it's just one of those deals that the guys that are in it together in situations like that, coming from Sonoma, they just find each other on the racetrack everywhere, every session. So
What about when you're in the car and you pull out to make a move on a guy, but then somebody else pulls out and should he have been checking his right mirror?
I think at the end of the day, hindsight's going to be 20/20 on this, and you can watch a million replays. And absolutely, he should have known that Dixon was there because it wasn't. Dixon had already asserted himself in that position. It wasn't like it was them both happening at the same time. Dixon was there, and then Will came over. I think, frankly, Bourdais was kind of backing everybody up at that point, and so I would imagine that Will just didn't even think that there was going to be somebody behind him. He's got a big head of steam on Bourdais. There's certainly nobody next to him at that point, and just thought there's no way that somebody could have a big enough run on him. So it's really I feel horrible for Scott. I mean, it seems like this kind of thing happens more often to him than if you put it all together for the rest of the paddock combined. But I guess I'd say in terms of the actual incident itself, it's tough to place a lot of blame on Will, despite the fact that for sure he should have known that he was there.
So last week, you badmouthed me because I said, that's the championship. It's over 39 points. And then you reminded me, no, Ryan Hunter-Reay was only 36 behind with 2 races to go last year and still won. Well, is it over? Is Castroneves got it? The world, I think today was, if it's not his year, I give up.
Yeah.
I hate to be mean to Helio, but it strikes me as weird that the fact that he's only been truly outstanding at Texas and the heat race at Iowa, and I'd say Dixon has had more outstanding races than him, but Helio has just turned into captain consistency this year, and which you just wouldn't have expected given previous years. And yeah, what is it now? 49 points, I think, the gap. So I've got to say, yeah, I think he probably has got it in the bag. But the great thing is Dixie can now just go for it. He has to go for it in the same way that Hunter-Reay did last year. And while we're on the subject of Hunter-Reay and actually Dario, ex-champions, I hated seeing them taken out by 2 incidents that were neither the fault of other people smashing into them or, their own fault. It's just really sad when you lose 2 champions through no fault of their own. So that was a bummer of a day as well.
All right, let's get out the red, white, and blue American flag. Newgarden finishes second, his first podium. You raced with him, you know the guy. I think the thing that's interesting is that he's been quick. They just haven't had a lot of luck, and he almost he came close to winning Brazil. And hey, this is the kind of thing that might jumpstart this kid.
I hope so. I think Joseph's obviously a super talented guy, and he's grown into, I think, his position with the team and in the series and all that kind of stuff a little bit over the last couple of years. You saw between him or circumstances on track, call it some bad luck here and there. He threw away a lot of events last year and at the beginning of this year. But you talk about Brazil and then come in here, a really smart drive, through the race. He looked. If you had asked me where he was going to end up 20 laps into the race, I would have told you in the wall or in the fence or whatever, because he was kind of he was really erratic. He spoke to that at the end of the race, that he got some marbles on the tires and couldn't get back with it. But it looked all over. This isn't a track that you can really get away with that for very long without hitting something or somebody hitting you or whatever. And he pulled it together, managed to keep his wits about him through all those yellows and stuff. Worked his way up to the front. He's been bad fast all weekend and managed to use that without then overdriving the car by too much at the end of the race. So it's great to see. I think it's great for the series, certainly great for the team. And, I think Joseph's got some more left in the tank.
I think we thought Bourdais might be the guy on the top step of the podium before he got spun.
He says he got spun, but that was a weird place to try and pass, I gotta say. Around the outside of Pagenaud, so he gets kind of like nerfed sideways. I thought, if there's one person you don't try and take, it's the guy that you've had some interesting battles with and also been teammates with in Peugeot sports cars, you don't try and take him around the outside of that corner at all. So I think Pagenaud was right to hold his ground. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Sebastian did a fantastic job all day. I mean, that team isn't heavily budgeted, and he truly deserved the podium. And as he said, in the end, he was just relieved to finish. And considering all the crap he went through, I completely understand that kind of mentality. He was superb.
Okay, there's a chance he's going to be a free agent. We know Kanon's a free agent. J.R. Hildebrand's a free agent. James Hinchcliffe. Got anything going, kid? You're going to get to run for Brian at Fontana. Is it still? I mean, they're telling the Indy 500 champ Tony Kanaan you got to find money. So you're a smart guy. You can go out and talk and shake hands. That's the challenge the next couple months?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think a lot of us are in the same boat. Everybody's got their own kind of deals going on and all that kind of stuff. Certainly I've been able to get a little bit of a head start on it given my situation this year, so that hasn't been all bad. But it's going to be tricky. There's not. I think realistically until Helio, Dario, will those guys start moving around, retiring, whatever. That's I think when a big shakeup in the IndyCar series will eventually happen. Until then, it's going to be everybody fighting for the scraps that are available and whatever rides end up happening. So, a little bit of money always helps, and I think we're probably all in that boat.
JR, thanks for joining us. Davey Malsher. They want to come back to Baltimore. Mark Miles says he wants to come back. Michael Andretti says he wants to come back. They said the city's got enough money. The next thing is they got to find a date because they can't do it Labor Day weekend in the next 2 years. Thanks for reading and watching RACER.com.